and welcome to our first book chat of 2024.
Happy
I'm Donna Jones.
2024.
I know, right?
Sorry,
I'm Donna Jones Allward. This is Barbara Tanner Wallace, and together we host Step Into the Story. We're authors and, of course, avid readers, and we love talking about historical fiction. So welcome to 2024, Barb.
Hey, good year.
What's new?
Not a lot. We were just talking off things. I am getting ready to go sailing in Florida, which is quite nice, given that we're talking about Unsinkable. But yeah, getting ready to go sailing. It's going to be very windy, so we're not sure we're taking the boat out the day we want to take it out.
Yeah, we were talking before, and then you said, yeah, this is a great topic for today's show. Because I was saying that my one and only time in a sailboat, we capsized, and I hated it because I don't actually like swimming in the ocean, and we were in open water, and I was like 14, so it was not my favorite thing. So as we go along with today's discussion, I can say that I relate more to Daphne than Violet.
You know, what's funny is we sunk a boat. I wasn't on it. My husband was, and it wasn't any. The boat sunk. It hit. He got tied up in a lobster buoy, and the wind threw him into this barge that was half sunken off of Massachusetts. If you go down the Southern Mass, there's a thing called Rooster Rock, somewhere like that. But he hit it,
right,
and it pushed the centerboard up into the boat, so they started taking on water. And it took him a long time to get comfortable. I mean, my husband's been sailing since he was a little boy, and he said they took on water. The Coast Guard came and got him. The boat went down, and there was a 14-year-old boy with them. It was his friend and his friend's son. And I don't believe that boy has ever gone on a boat again. Like, he was terrified. And my husband said it took him a long time to get comfortable again. He's like, he could sail and he did it, but he was like, it still was always in the back of his head that he had this one mishap. And it was a fluky thing. You know, it was wavy, and he didn't see the buoy, and the buoy got tangled up, and that was the end of it. Yeah.
I was out with my brother-in-law, and I trusted him completely, but still I had this unease about being in open water, and it was a small boat, so when we capsized, it was like, oops. And I tried not to panic. He was really good about it, and like I said, I was really young, but I still. Now, that being said, I love the ocean. I love being on the water generally, but the idea of capsizing in the ocean is not good. So,
did you have a life jacket on?
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good to say.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. It's always wear your life jacket. We learned that lesson. Actually, I learned that lesson as a young girl. That was...
Same. And it's funny because now, I know we got to get to the book chat, but we were out with a friend on I think he had like a 17-footer, and we were just on the lake. Like, we weren't in open ocean, I don't think. I mean, we've taken it on the ocean. But, they'd be like, oh, we're just, taking the kids tubing or whatever. And I'd always have my life jacket on, right? And they'd give me such a hard time, like, oh, look, and they'd call me buoy because I'd be all like, But my thing was always, like, you don't wear a life jacket because you can see the accident coming. You know what I mean? Like, it's there because accidents happen that you don't expect. So I always was just, I'm a safety first girl.
We are too. And I always answer, not to bring the topic down, but the neighbor of a good friend of mine in high school, they had a summer house, and her neighbor at the summer house was out in his motorboat one night, and they hit something, and he got knocked over and never came up, didn't have a life jacket on.
Yeah.
And so I said that to my husband. He's like, oh, I'm never going to make fun of you for wearing a life jacket. And they have really nice, comfortable ones now. So.
Oh, yeah. Like, I know, like, we wear kayaking now, and we have paddling ones, which are
not at all like the life jackets they had in the Titanic, which brings us to our book. Look at that.
Yes, let's get to our book chat.
Okay, so today we're talking about Jenni Walsh's book, Unsinkable, which pairs two stories. There's the story of Violet Jessop, who was a real person. She was a nurse during World War I, but before that, she survived the sinking of the Titanic and another boat accident. I think she survived like 3 before she even became a World War I nurse.
It was weird. Like,
it was tons, and not to mention like all this other stuff. And it pairs it with Daphne, who is a fictional character, and she's during World War II, and she is on I guess we'd say an intelligence assignment with the resistance in France.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it alternates, and the book alternates point of views. So between 1912, which is Violet, and into the 20s too with her, really. And then World War II with Daphne. And Violet works as a stewardess with the White Star Line, and which is why she was on the Titanic and the Olympic before that.
That's
And
the one. Yeah.
what I really liked about her was her love of the sea, and the fact that, she really made no bones about the fact that it was more her home than her actual family home in Ealing. And even after the Titanic sank, she went back to work on the sea, because she was supporting her family. And she could have done other jobs, but honestly, the tips from the first class passengers made such a difference in her income that she kept working as a stewardess. And then once the war broke out, of course, in 1914, she becomes a VAD, so she becomes a volunteer nurse, and works as a nurse for wounded men who were transported back to England.
Well, then on the other hand, you had Daphne, who was extremely well educated, had attended multiple universities. She spoke multiple languages. She's proficient in Arabic, German, Spanish, French. I think they said 6, and I can't remember all of them.
And then she learns them as she goes.
Right. She has a photographic or almost eidetic. Is it eidetic? Eidetic memory. And she's an expert in art so she works at an art gallery. She's completely opposite Violet in that sense, but she's recruited to work for the OSS, or the special operations, the original special operations in World War II. And all you know about her is that her mother died when she was little, and her father is extremely famous. He is a huge movie star turned director, and she's been trying to get his attention her whole life because he's always ignored her. And instead, she signs up for this to kind of impress him, and she's immediately thrown into the war. Like within days of signing up and getting her training, they're like, "Oh, you going in?"
Yeah, you're not even going to go do this. Like, she was supposed to go do jump training, and they didn't even do that. They were like, "Nope, you're going in right now." And she was like, "What? What the heck?" So actually, there was a really, really great scene where she gets her orders, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm leaving tomorrow." And then they put her through a final test before she leaves. And it was like, wow, like things are moving really quickly.
But that also showed exactly how smart she was. And how good she was, because she figured out sort of these context clues so when you would think most people would be terrified and she's confused and they've done all these, psychological games, and she's still picking out things. She did a great job, and you realize this woman knows what she's doing.
Yeah, and she thinks on her feet really well. And it's funny though, because as I was reading, I was kind of surprised to see the 2 storylines take place in 2 different time periods. Like, I didn't expect that.
Yep.
And then the fact that there wasn't a clear link between the 2 characters. And we don't learn until quite late in the story what Violet's connection to Daphne is. But I actually found that when that happened, I thought it was really, really neat. Like, I
started to suspect it. I won't lie. I started to suspect.
Yeah, I didn't actually. I actually didn't suspect that. I suspected something else. That was, which was really a little more far-fetched, is kind of what I expected. But I kept trying to piece it together, and I wasn't getting it. But which storyline did you like better? Because, they're 2 very different storylines.
Yeah, and I got to confess, I like Daphne's better. I think that Violet Jessop's life is astounding. It wasn't just that she survived a couple boat sinkings. This woman almost died of tuberculosis, and she had scarlet fever.
Yeah.
And they go through everything that happened, and half her family died of illnesses, and her mother had a nervous breakdown, and her father died. She was a survivor. But Daphne was too, but I think what difference in the storyline was that Violet's whole storyline was reacting to things that happened to her. And granted, they were pretty big things that happened to her. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I stubbed my toe. It was, oh, I'm on this ocean liner that sunk and killed 2,000 people. But she was always reacting, whereas Daphne was much more doing things. She was getting herself into situations and then getting herself out. She wasn't just letting things happen to her. So I think that that's why I liked it more. And I also liked Daphne's voice more, maybe because she did have a little snark in her. And
Yeah, she could be saucy.
right, and I like that. Like, she wasn't always saucy to others, but a lot of her
Yeah,
POV and the way she was thinking, I liked it. I liked how she thought. I got a kick out of
yeah.
her.
And in some ways that kind of fit, you know, the time of being 20 years later
Yeah.
than Violet. I also gravitated toward Daphne's, but I think part of it was the whole danger and working with the resistance that pulled me forward. Um, because when you think about Violet, even when she became a nurse, she was working in England, right? When men were shipped back for treatment, she wasn't in the thick of it on the front, and Daphne was. I mean, she was in danger a lot, and I mean that's a great way to keep pace moving and that kind of thing. So, and I also put in my notes that I thought she was a really sparky character.
Yeah, I
Um,
really liked her for that.
she could think on her feet. There's a scene where she is okay. It's minor spoilery. There's a scene where she's caught, and she has to come up with a story, like on the spot kind of thing. And the first thing she does is pretend to faint and buy herself time. And it was just
Yeah.
like I just loved how she did that. And it was really funny because all of that sparkiness was really in opposition or in contrast to um, the little girl who really just wanted her father's attention and acknowledgement. So I thought that was a really neat aspect of her character.
Yeah, I really like that. And but it's interesting because Violet was the character that earned the title Miss Unsinkable, which is the name of the book. And I'm going to hold it up here
Yeah,
because the cover's
Unsinkable.
really
Yes,
cool.
we both have copies here.
Yeah, the cover is really cool because you see the ship and the person.
Yeah, I love
And
the cover.
yeah, it's different. It's not like your usual historical fiction covers, which I thought was kind of nice.
No, it's got the picture of the Titanic on it, and then you know the woman in the woman's silhouette. So I really like
Um,
it.
yeah, but I think that it applied to both of them, the title, because Violet was unsinkable because she was on ships that sunk and she kept surviving. But Daphne also kept surviving things, and it wasn't. I know we were talking like she had her mishaps on the water, which there's a couple. There's one that's
Yep.
really key, but she also survived getting caught. She survived the war. Like
Yeah.
they were both like they weren't phased by disaster happening.
Yeah, and
They were unflappable as well as unsinkable. I think that's
yeah,
what
and it's funny how these are brought together by two opposing points. So like Violet loves the sea, like I was saying before, and always gravitates toward it. And even when things are getting a little bit tough for her, other people notice that she misses the sea and like point her in that direction. But Daphne hates the water. There's a scene in her training where she has to do something in the water, and she is full on not happy about it and afraid. And they do mention that her mother died at sea, so
Yep.
that kind of explains why she would have a mistrust of it. But there's lots of other ways the characters parallel. Like they both feel this great sense of duty. Um, for Daphne is like she spent a lot of time in Paris, and she really feels like she has this duty to restore France to the French people. And so she has that kind of sense of duty. But then Violet feels such a strong familial duty to look after her family, and I think she has some pretty significant survivor's guilt. And so there's the reasons behind that sense of duty are very different, but they're both really strong parts of their personalities.
I agree, and I think there's this great scene in Daphne's storyline where it's kind of a turning point for her, where she goes from wanting to impress her dad to really feeling this obligation towards France. And there's this
Yeah.
one particular scene it really was a powerful scene, and it was really well written. And she wasn't in it; she was observing it, and yet you still felt what was
Yeah, it
going
was
on.
this whole shift in her perspective. It's almost
Right.
like that growing up moment, right?
Yeah. Well, and the distance I think made a difference. I think the fact that Jenny put it at a distance helped.
Yeah.
And because it dawns on me, one of the things that it dawned on me of why I liked Daphne's over Violet's was because Daphne was a wholly fictional character. The fictional character, you can mold them to suit the story. They can have that major turning point that you use the events to make them change. Because you're in charge of the backstory and the motivation and all that. Whereas with a real person, and I've said this before with fictional biographies, we all know I have a love-hate relationship with them.
We both do.
Because there are some really good ones, and I don't want to like slam the whole thing. But I think that sometimes, and I think this was the case with this book, because I've read other Jenni Walsh's books. I think that it constrains you and it flattens the characterization. She couldn't really give us a lot of tension in Violet's story because we knew she survived. That was a matter of fact that she survived all these things. So there was no life or death. Whereas Daphne, we didn't know what she was going to do with the character. So we were a little more mystery. And I think that that's the problem. Now, that said, Jenni did try to fix that. And I give her major props because she tweaked history just a bit. And I won't say where, but she did do it to kind of create a little more emotion and tension.
Yeah.
Because she understood. It's clear she understands that she's been constrained and says, okay, well, I got to do something because otherwise it's just a series of events happening to this woman.
Right. And
I give her props.
I'd agree with that. Like when you're writing about a real person, you're dealing with things that really happened as well as being sort of tasked with ascribing emotions to to that person. And that's a really tough job. And maybe that's why you and I are both sort of on the fence about, fictional biographies or, any story that uses real, people that really existed, is that, there are some that are done so very well. And then there are others that just feel like the writing is fine, but they just feel a little bit flat, like you said. And I think
they're just spitting out facts.
Yeah, and they can try it a lot, but it just doesn't quite hit that mark where okay, so a really good one will make you forget that you're reading about a real person and just get caught up in the character. And so and then there are others that are well written, but doesn't quite take you to that level. And so I think that's why you and I are really sort of hard on those. And I'll tell you, it's 100% why I'm very hesitant to not write just a straight up fictional character.
Same with me. I know that right now is very popular and a lot of readers love them. And there are some writers out there who do a marvelous job. And I think, like I said, I think Jenni did a good job because she did what she could. And you can tell that she understood her constraints and she tried to respect that. But at the same time, she's like, I got to write a good story.
It still has to be compelling. Yeah.
Right. And she, being a good writer, gave it enough elements to make it compelling because there were some mysteries attached to Violet that you did want to find out.
Right. And like the other thing too is that Violet's story starts in 1912, but it actually ends in 1946. I think it's 46, the same as Daphne, right? So that's a much longer scope rather than just being, 1942 to 46.
Right.
Kind of
and
thing.
So much happened. She did have to shove a lot in. That's the other problem with writing history is you have to shove so much in. And you can't leave out a major event. If this woman had 5 major events, you can't leave one out.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my nose is itchy. I think I had too many cat snuggles today, and then I'm always like, super lots of cat snuggles happening here these days. Lots of fur, but it's lovely. Sorry, I totally went off.
That's okay. So, final verdict.
Okay, so my only complaint is actually there were a few times when some modern words or phrases crept in, and I noticed them. But that's really, really minor. Otherwise, I really enjoyed this book. My next book that I'm writing is Titanic based. So reading about Violet was really neat for me. And actually, it was really neat seeing her interact with like first class passengers and how they talked about the first class passengers. Because what I notice with a lot of Titanic set stories right now is that it is usually the working class point of view. It's not from the point of view of someone in first class. So, I found that really neat, and I found the story arcs compelling. Like even though I preferred Daphne's, I did find both of them compelling. So it's a recommended read from me.
Me too. This is the second book I read by her. I read Call of the Wrens, which if you haven't read, you will really enjoy.
Oh, good, because I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, no, that was a really fun read too. A couple things. One, I didn't notice the terms until you told me, which tells me that I was engrossed in the story.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I rate a fictional biography on is how much it makes me go look up more stuff. And this sent me down a lot of rabbit holes because I was really interested in learning more about Violet Jessop. And I found this website that like these people go into detail, like this Titanic organization that's really into. I sent you the
Titanic.
link. They went lifeboat by lifeboat and like person by person. I'm
Oh,
like,
yes,
oh my
that
God.
is a treasure trove. That's a treasure trove of
And I was
information. if you're
like,
looking for-
and they have one all about. They had like a whole thing on not Jenny, on Violet Jessop, and the part of the
yeah.
story that Jenny used. They have a
Yeah, it's called
whole.
Encyclopedia Titanica.
I was loving it. So,
Yeah.
And the other thing that I will say is Jenny's, in her other writing life, she writes young adult. And I think that comes across in this book because it's not super gritty. It's not super dark. I mean, there's emotion, but it's not.
And there is detail. Like, it doesn't shy away from it and make it fluffy, but it's not gritty.
Right. And sometimes you don't want a gritty read. I mean, I've just finished a bunch of them where they were kind of hard and dark and, awful, sad things happened. And this was a little bit lighter in that I didn't hear descriptions of torture and I didn't get,
Right.
There wasn't a lot of blood and gore. People died, but off screen,
Yeah.
And it wasn't dark. It was an enjoyable read. And but because she writes young adult, I think that also comes into it. Then it's a much, there's not a lot of profanity. There's not a lot of sex in her books, all of that. I mean, For Call the Wrens was the same way. And I worked at Barnes & Noble and someone came in and said they had a young teenage girl and was interested in historical fiction. She's the type of she's the type of author that I would use to introduce young teenagers to historical fiction.
Yeah.
Because it's well written, it's well researched, and it's not too much for somebody.
Yeah.
And so I definitely recommend it for everybody. But if you're a parent and you have a teenager and you want to say, hey, you want to read a really good historical fiction, she's someone I would recommend.
Yep. All right. So recommended read from both of us.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So why don't you let us know what's up next for us?
Well, for me, it's A Week in the Keys.
I know. I just wanted you to have to say that and then like everybody hate you because you're going to spend a week in the Florida Keys.
I am. I'm heading to Key Largo in a couple days. But actually, I'm kind of bummed because our feature author is going to be Glynis Peters, who is going to be talking about her latest release, The Orphan Homecoming, but she's got a trilogy. It's called the Red Cross Orphans Trilogy, right? Is that?
Yes.
And she happens to be with your publisher, which is kind of fun.
She is.
And she's kind of a rising star. I recognized her name because her books are on a lot of shelves. And she's older. She's an older author, and I am all for older female authors. And they don't get nearly enough attention. So she's a retired nurse, and now she's a writer. I'm kind of bummed because I really would have liked to have talked with her. She sounds like a very interesting woman. So you get to interview her.
Well, you'll have to tune in.
I will have to either tune in or watch the recording. I may be on a boat. Kind of hard to tune in on a boat, and you'd all hate me.
Yeah, well,
I'll be sailing. And then in February, we have our book. We are going to do Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I hope I pronounced it right. It's Lawhon.
Yes.
And it's a post-Revolutionary War book based in Maine, which I'm excited about. I think it kind of has a murder mystery attached to it. And it's out of World War II, people. Yay! Not that I don't. Don't get me wrong. I'm writing World War II, but
I know. It's nice to the change of pace.
Well, and I love giving, like the same thing with Unsinkable. I love kind of giving a nod to unusual historical periods.
Yeah.
And so this, I'm really excited about. It appeals to the daughter of American Revolution in me. And better yet, this was suggested because we're going to have a guest. Our friend Sydney Young from HF Chit Chat is coming on.
Yeah.
And she's the one that suggested it. So please check our Facebook and Instagram for book broadcast details, and we'll put the link to the book in the show notes. But she read it, and she's going to reread it because she said it was one of the best books she read last year. I can't wait. Very excited.
Me either. I'm looking forward to both those broadcasts. First with Glynis, and then having Sid come back. I love anytime that we get to spend time with Sid. I'm a happy girl. She's
She
lovely.
is wonderful.
And the book looks really good, and it's probably not one I would have picked up on my own, but Sid does a good job picking books. So,
Well, that's why we had her suggested. Actually, people should know
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
the one that picked Joan last year, which I never would have picked up. And it turned out to be one of my favorite reads of 2022.
And
So
Joan
I'm
was
all
so
over letting her
good.
choose.
Yeah, no, Sid's great. So yes, we will. We'll put the link to the book in the show notes so that people can read along with us. And you can always find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/stepintothestory.
Yep.
Or on YouTube and also on Instagram, same handle, which is at Step Into the Storybooks.
That's right. And we encourage you to do that because we pop in from now and again, like my cat. It's dinner time here for the cats. That's why.
That's so funny.
We pop in with recommendations in between, and we'll give you updates on the reading challenge, all sorts of stuff.
Sounds good.
So have a great time with Glynis Peters. Sorry I missed you all.
Have a great time in the Keys.
I will post pictures.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
See you later. Bye-bye.